You ready to start? Yes. Great. How was lunch?
Very good.
Excellent. Yeah, you know, I was watching how they were breaking down and setting up and breaking down and setting up out there. It's amazing how they do it. And it reminded me of, you know, the old FBI movies when they come in to crash the gambling casino and they flip it over and it's a church. Yeah? That's kind of what it reminded me of. But I welcome everybody. You know, if you need to get, I hope everyone had their bathroom break, but if you didn't, please feel free to get up any time to leave. I won't be insulted if you need to leave the room. I'll stay, but you guys are welcome to leave. I want to tell you about today's program. It's called Lessons from Lunch with Lucille. But before I do that, I want to ask you if you know what Lunch with Lucille is. Does anybody here know what Lunch with Lucille is? Yes, answer the question.
It's living your best life.
Living your best life. Very good. Very good. Anyone else? No? Okay, so hopefully you'll know a little bit more about it because it is a story. It is a book that I wrote. It's what I consider to be anyway, and what the feedback has been, is that it's an inspirational novel about the value of age. That's really what it's all about. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about that. And the first thing that I want you to do, though, is introduce myself. My name is Anna Rose Ingara Milch. That's a big name. Big name. Anybody here by the name of Anna Rose? Okay. because if you were named Anna Rose, that would be great because you would be my cousin. So that would be wonderful. And I'll tell you why. Because Anna Rose is my maternal grandmother's name, so my mother's mother. And my mother's mother had 18 children. So my grandmother had 18 children. Now, each one of her children who had a daughter named the first daughter Anna Rose. Okay? So in my family, it's a very common name. So when I own also in my other life, besides being an author, I own a company called ROI Training and Consulting. We are a professional development and business management consulting firm. And I work with my husband, Charles. This is my husband, Charles. Wave, Charles. Yes, Charles and I are married almost 40 years, and we work together. Yeah, we're together 24 hours a day. Yeah, 7 days a week. 365 days a year. Yeah. And as we were driving over here, Charles said, you know what? In 2 years, it's going to be leap year, and we're going to get an extra day. So we're all excited about that. But anyway, when I first met Charles, he came to work where I was working. I'm a retired probation officer. That's another one of my other lives. And he came to work where I was working. And I peeked my head into this office, and I said, you know, where's the other guy that used to sit here? And he says, well, you know, he doesn't work here anymore. I work here. And so I said, oh, okay. And he said, well, what's your name, little girl? You know how they do that, guys. You know how they, and so I said, Anna Rose. And he said, oh, that's such a unique name. I'm saying to myself, everybody I know is named Anna Rose. You know, this guy is like crazy. So after a couple of months, we started to date. And this was in Kingston, New York. I don't know if anybody knows where Kingston, New York is. I see some heads nodding at exit 19 on the thruway. And so I took, but my family is from Brooklyn. So everybody knows where Brooklyn is, right? The whole world knows where Brooklyn is. So I invited him to a wedding, a big Italian wedding in Brooklyn. And he made the mistake of calling me. Like, there must have been 250, 300 people there. And he calls me across the room, calls for me. He yells, Anna Rose. And I swear to God, half the room yelled back, what? So everybody kind of like turned around and looked at me. In those days, all the dark hair, dark-eyed young women there. And then at that time, Charles had blonde hair and blue eyes, the only Jewish guy in the room, and they're just like, who is this guy, you know? But it worked out. We have been together ever since. So anyway, so that's a little bit about me. So what I want to do now is I'm going to ask you a little bit about you. Now, I know this is a little different of a forum, little setup. So just give me a little bit of a hint as to some job titles that are out there. Travel agent. Minister. Activity director. Yay? Oh, activity director. Yay. Did I miss? I got to get that acronym. Yay. Why? Yay. Chaplain. Dietitian. Counselor. A trainer. Ooh, uh-oh. You sit next to a trainer too. You know this one's a trainer too over here. So we got trainers. I'll get critiqued here. That's okay. Keep going. Anybody else?
Volunteer coordinator.
Volunteer coordinator. Great. Poet. There you go. Occupational therapy. Wonderful. So we got lots of different. Teacher. Okay, so we have lots of different job titles here. So we've got lots of different walks of life, basically, what we have here. So why did you choose this session? Anybody? You need inspiration. We all need inspiration. Ah, I like that one. Keep going. Anyone else?
I want to find out what the 4 diamonds represent.
Oh, I'm going to tell you. I am going to tell you what those 4 diamonds represent. Besides pointing to my bosom over here, there are 4 diamonds, a 4-diamond brooch, and I'm going to tell you what each diamond represents. Very good. Anybody else? Actually, Lucille is my mother. Okay, so the book is written about my mother. It's the inspiration is taken from her life, and I'll tell you a little bit about that as well. Because this is a work of fiction, because it is about my mother, and we all have mothers. So but it is taken from her life, and so I'll tell you a little bit about that. Okay, so let me just keep going on here. When we look at what's going on today at the conference, is we've been taking a kind of a global approach, right? We've had speakers who talked about the global approach, and then we had another speaker who was talking on the state level, and then there's also sessions going on organizational level. So it's kind of like a funnel, global to state to organizational. And we're going to get even closer on that, and we're going to go right into us, into the individual, because regardless of what level we are talking about, organizational or state or the global level, it all begins with people, doesn't it? I mean that's not I'm not a rocket science here, but that's really what it is. So that's what we're going to be talking about, us, people who are in the forefront of this initiative, people who may have our family members who are affected by this. But regardless of what it is, we're all going through something. We are all in the same boat. We are all human beings. And that's what Lucille is looking at. And what she says from the message, the key of her message, is very simple, that you are your best asset at any age. We are, each individual one of us. Now I ask you this, if you have an asset, any asset, what do you do with it?
Protect it.
You protect it. I love it. Keep going. What do you do with an asset?
Utilize it.
You utilize it.
Make it grow.
Make it grow. Keep going. What else?
Appreciate
Appreciate it. Exactly. So these are, did you say something?
it. She did flaunt it.
Flaunt it. Yeah, there you go. Why not? What the hell? Do it. So these are all part of the things that when we're talking about an asset, and if we consider ourselves an asset, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to protect it. We're going to flaunt it. We're going to make it grow. And that's really what Lunch with Lucille is about, reminding ourselves that we are our best asset at any age. In fact, our age is our best asset. Think of how smart you are today compared with how smart you were 20 years ago. So we take that into the 4 diamonds, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what each diamond is and how she did it. But let me just say this. You probably know this, and just statistics-wise, is that each day, 10,000 people turn the age of 60. And each day, another 10,000 turn the age of 65. Within 20 years, a fifth of our population in the United States is going to be over the age of 65. 1 in 5 people. I'm well on my way. Yeah. That's a phenomenal thought. It's never happened before. We are all aging. This is a universal topic of aging. So that's really one of the reasons why I wrote the book, was to really understand what aging is all about. What is this that I'm going into? And all the people that I hang out with are going into. Even my children, right? My children are getting old. Did you realize, I mean, this is, I'm a boomer, as I'm guessing if some of you are in the room, that the generation that comes after us, Generation X, Gen X, do you realize that Gen X, the first round of Gen X are turning 50 this year? That's a phenomenal concept. My kids are all Gen Xers. They didn't turn 50 years, but they're all Gen Xers. I mean, you know, so it's really, when you stop and think about it, you really talk about the value of time and age really are synonymous terms, aren't they? So that's what we're talking about, is the value of age here. And so when I thought about how am I going to write this book, I said, you know, who do I look to, really? And that's when I started to think about my mother. Now, my mother passed away several years ago, and she died at the age of 92. Now, here's the thing with her. If I take the fiction, if I take the fiction out of if I pull out the nonfiction, is what I'm trying to say, the real story behind her, here's what it is. Now, in 1942, I told you that my mother comes from Brooklyn, New York, right? So she's the youngest of 18 children. And in 1942, she gets married to this guy who eventually becomes my dad. Now, what was going on in 1942? World War II, right, the big one. So he's like anybody else. He was a pharmacist at the time, and any able-bodied male ran down to enlist in the service. And when he got down to the draft board, they told him that he was 4F, right? That's the designation for you can't go in, right? Because there's something medically wrong with you. He had gotten hit by a car in like 1929, and he walked with a limp and a cane. And I always think to myself, you know, how many cars were on the road in 1929? But somehow they found my father. So they found my father. So anyway, he gets 4F'd. Now, he's a pharmacist at the time. He comes back and he tells my mother, they're recently married. He says, you know, I can't go back to school. I can't go back to work, and I'm going to go back to school. So my mother says to him, you know, what are you, out of your mind? I mean, you're old by today's standards. He was in his mid-20s. And I'm sure the other part of what she's thinking, now, I'm going to have to support you. I mean, that would be the other end of the stick, right? So, but he had a very uplifting type of philosophy, and he just thought, you listen, if they'll teach me, I'm going to learn. So, to make a long story short, he goes back to college, he becomes and back to medical school, and he becomes a doctor. And he graduates in 1949. So, in 1949, my oldest brother, Joe, is born. And my father comes to my mother and says, we're leaving Brooklyn now, we got to move. And my mother says, what do you mean we have to move? Not now, not now. Now you got the degree, we can stay here. And he says, no, we have to move because if we stay here in Brooklyn, I'll go broke. And we'll go broke. And she said, why would that be? He says, because your family is going to sit in my waiting room, and I won't be able to charge anybody because all my patients are going to have your last name. So we have to move. So I guess my mother added it up, and they decided to move, and they moved up to 90 miles outside of New York City, which is in a city called Kingston, New York. At that time, it was a really, really little town. It still is a little town, but it was much little, especially from somebody from Brooklyn. And so my father, that's 1949, 1950 they get there, and things are going pretty good. My father sets up his practice. They buy a house, a big house. In those days, they put the practice in the basement. You remember? I don't know if anybody here remembers, but the doctor's office was in the basement, and we lived on the top 3 floors. Big house, big Victorian home. And so that's 1949, 50-ish. And they buy the Buick. Things are good. Money's coming in. Life is good. 1952, my other brother is born. My brother Tom is born. Again, things are good. Things are really, really, really good. And then things get really great because in 1954, I'm born. So now it's perfect, right? They got the 2 boys, they got the daughter. We got this young doctor who's making money. She's going to the country clubs. Life is good. They got the Buick. Everything is really nice. In 1955, my father gets a draft notice. And he is drafted, and he is sent to Fort Riley, Kansas. And he spends 2 years there. And he becomes an anesthesiologist during that time. So when he comes back to Kingston, now he's a specialist. Now the money's really coming in. So heck with the Buick, let's get the Cadillac. And things are really good, really, really, really good. And so 1957 is really, so then in 1958, in the spring of 1958, my father gets sick, and in August of 1958, my father passes away from pancreatic cancer. Now, I don't tell you that story to be a downer, because that's really not the purpose of the story. Instead, what it is that's the time, that's the critical point in Lucille's life. At the age of 40, in 1958, she makes a decision that she's got to now move forward. How do I do that? How do I make my age my best asset? How do I do that? I know I'm my best asset, but how do I do that? And so that's really, from my perspective, how I'm looking at and watching how she does it. And then I look around in the best practice, using best practices, and come up with the 4 diamonds. So that's how she did it. And that's what this diamond is called, and I call it the jewel of inspiration, because that's really what it is. It inspires me each day, and each day that I wear it. So let me give you a little background about the first thing. Okay, so the first diamond, how are we doing on time? Good. All right, the first diamond, she says, is to change your perspective. That's the first diamond when it comes to how you think, how you view life. And here's the thing. She went back into the job market at the age of 40. We are all now advancing in years as well. To really understand this value of age is to look at our age in a very positive sense. You know? Sometimes we look around and we see our children, our grandchildren even, who are so computer literate and so technologically literate, and sometimes it can take a hit on your ego. Can you help me with this, Grandma? Actually, no, I can't. You know. And so sometimes it really can bother us. You know, maybe I'm feeling of getting left behind. So Lucille is saying, that's really not how it goes. In the, early to mid 20th century, there was a psychologist by the name of Robert Cattell, C-A-T-T-E-L-L. And he coined a term called crystallized intelligence. Has anybody ever heard that term? What do you know? Can you share it?
We have 2 types of intelligence. One is the facts that we learn during our life, and those, and we have a different kind of intelligence that suddenly I went there.
No,
Just a few moments. So, but we have liquid intelligence, fluid intelligence, and this crystallized intelligence. So we garner facts during our life. We might forget those, but there's certain types of intelligence that exist.
Exactly. Okay, so I don't know if you heard what she said, so I'll recap it. So there are 2 types of intelligence. There's fluid intelligence, and there is crystallized intelligence. So the fluid intelligence is that knowledge that we gain in our youth that we're learning. It's learning in the learning process. Right? And then we flip over, or maybe it runs consecutively, concurrently rather, is the crystallized intelligence. And it is the crystallized intelligence, that knowledge that we get strictly by learning. There's no book, there's no PowerPoint, there's nobody standing on a podium to tell you about it. You gotta live it. You know? And once you live it, you understand it. I remember a couple of years ago, 25 years ago, That sounds like yesterday, kind of. My mother used to say that, and I'd say, how can you talk about 25 years ago? But now I understand it's yesterday. I remember my son, he was freshman home from college, and his girlfriend came, and then she had to take a flight back to Boston. You know? He took her to the airport, and he came home, and he was crying so hard. And I said, what's the matter, you know, what's the matter? And he goes, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. Are you kidding me, kid? You ain't seen nothing yet, you know. But to him, it was the hardest thing he had ever done, to part with his girlfriend. But then we go on, you know. So, you know, so this changing our perspective is something that it takes time, it takes practice. You know, and some of us are a little harder to bend, a little bit less flexible, so to speak. You know, we get a little set in our ways. I'll give you a perfect example of this. I told you that Charles and I work together, and sometimes when we're working for a company, sometimes we work in the same room, and sometimes we divide and conquer. So on this one time, we were working with this company. They were in about an 8-story building. And it was one of our divide and conquer days. So we walk into the lobby, and the security guard says, Anna Rose, you're right down this hallway in room 1. Charles, please take the elevator, go up to the 3rd floor, and you'll be in the conference room up there. So, okay, you know, we give each other like, yeah, good luck, good luck, you know. He gets on the elevator, he goes his way, and I go into my room. And what I like to do is, I have a routine. I like to come in, I like to make sure my audio, visual equipment is working. I like to meet the people, greet the people, and in this case, the front row over here who helped me get dressed. That's how I get into the flow of the room, you know, and then usually what I do is I leave the room, I go to the restroom, and then I come back. That's usually my routine. So this one day, I do that, everything. I go out to use the restroom, and when I get to the restroom, it's a typical women's restroom. There's 2 stalls, and there's 15 people, 15 women. So I say, like, you know, if I get on that line, they're going to call my name. I'm not going to be there, and I don't know how to explain that. So I go to the security. He says to me, it's no problem. You just take the elevator, go up on every floor. There's a restroom. So I said, okay. So I get into the elevator. You know, I push the button. I step in the elevator. There's nobody in the elevator, which is great. I turn around, hit the button, and I just stand there. And I'm kind of getting in the zone. And I press 1, and I go up, and I feel the elevator go up. You know how you feel that it goes, and then it goes, but the doors don't open. And I'm standing there going, okay. All right, bathroom on every floor. Hit 2. Again, fill it up. It's like, oh, this can't be happening. It just can't be happening. And then my armpits, you know, then you get that like hot flash, and it's like, oh man, this can't be happening to me. You know, it's like one of my worst nightmares, really. And so okay, I'll go this, okay, one more. I hit the 3rd button. And as I'm going up, all this is going through my head. I'm saying to myself, okay, doors are going to open. I'm going to run out. I'm going to take off my shoes. I'm going to find the exit. I'm going to run down. I'm just going to forget about it. I don't have to go to the bathroom. I don't need to look in the mirror. Everything is fine. I'm fine. I just got to get back into that room somehow. So I hit the 3, and it goes up. And while this thing is going up, and here again, boom. Oh no, didn't open. I stand there looking, staring, and I go, oh, dear God, please open the doors. And then I hear, Anna Rose, the doors are open. Now, I don't purport to know what the voice of God sounds like, but in that elevator, it sounded just like my husband, Charles. And then I felt a hand on my shoulder, and I look around, and there's my husband, Charles. And he points to a sign, and it says, all floors except the lobby exit from the rear. Now, it's very funny now. It wasn't very funny then. Okay? So, but it just goes to show, we get so stuck in our ways and how we see it. And this is just how I do it. This is who I am. No, what? That's the way it is. So if you like, take it or leave it. That's what it is. You get so stuck in that. And then that's where Lucille is saying, you've got to change your perspective. You've got to stay open. You've got to let it be. You've got to look differently. And right on the heel of that comes the second diamond. And the second diamond is to let go of the past. Now, Lucille is not saying to let go of those things that lift us up, those memories, those glorious memories, those joyous moments. That you keep deep in your soul. What she's saying is you let go of the I could'ves, I should'ves, I wish I had, if I only did that. That's what she's saying. There's just nothing you can do about it, girlfriend. You gotta let it go. Sometimes the past is years. And sometimes the past is just an hour ago, a minute ago. I had a conference the other day. I was doing a coaching session. The woman sat down. The first thing she did, she looked at me and she said, I got to tell you what happened this morning. So this guy, he cuts me right off. And the light was green. It was my way. I had the right of way. You think that, and I'm getting this entire traffic report, and there was no way that we were going to be able to continue that session if she didn't let it go. I mean, there was just nothing else you could do. So she kind of calmed down, and then we talked about letting it go, obviously, and then she just let it go. But that's some of the times things that we carry along with us. We carry that proverbial baggage, right? So Lucille is saying you gotta let it go. In the book, there's an exercise for it, and I should have brought one. Do we have time to go get one? Thank you, Charles. He's such a good boy. But there's a little exercise, and I'll show you how to do it when Charles gets back. But this talks about letting go of the past, and I'll show you how to do it, one way to do it anyway. But the other day, Charles and I came into the kitchen. Did you ever come in from outside, and when you walk into the kitchen, it like stinks, like there's like an odor, and it's like, where did that come from? So there was this really terrible reeking something going on in the kitchen, and Charles said, I know what it is. It's the garbage. That's his answer to everything. I'll take out the garbage. Take out the garbage. So he takes out the garbage, but as soon as he took out the garbage, it's still there, yeah. So we started washing down everything. We were washing down the counters, and thank you, Charles. We were washing down the counters. We were even washed down the refrigerator. Inside the refrigerator, nothing. Still stunk. As soon as the Lysol smell went away, it stunk. So we're on my hands and knees. I couldn't find it. And finally, I got really, really deep, and I look under the refrigerator, and I see this little thing, a little black ball or something. It was just gross. And it had a little fur on it, so I thought it was like a dead mouse or something. So we're moving the refrigerator out, and Charles gets the paper towel. It's like 3/4 of the roll. He's just wrapping his hand around. The thing is only this big, but he's just wrapping his hand around. I'll get it for you, darling. I'll save you, And he gets on his hands and knees, and he scoops it up. And he takes it out, puts it in the trash. And as soon as he walked out of the house, the kitchen smelled better. As soon as he did it, he doesn't. And when he came back in, he said to me that what it was an onion. And I didn't know, yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if it was there before I bought the house, but it was there a really, really, really long time. And I'm in the house like 15 years, so it was really gross. I thought it was something alive, like an animal or something. But anyway, I was thinking, that sometimes what happens is that we have this stinky thing from our past, and instead of letting it go, is we take it and we stick it in our pocketbooks, and we take it with us, and we take it to work with us, and we take it to our social affairs. We take it wherever we go, but we keep it with us, and it stinks, and we know it stinks. And eventually it will show up on our face because we're going, yeah, that face, yeah. She's got a good stink face. But that's it, And it shows up on your face, and it shows up, and you carry that with you. And Lucille is saying, you got to let it go. So here's a little exercise. And there's the marker. Okay, good. You know, when you have a mic on and you talk to yourself, it doesn't really not that effective. But I just realized. Okay, so here's a balloon. And so what you do is you think about, you really take this opportunity to really think about all that baggage that you carry, and then to be really direct, crap, just crap that you're carrying around. And then you write it on the balloon. Those things that really weigh you down, things that you really need to get rid of. I don't care what it is, you know, a past relationship that failed, a degree not earned, something you said, something you did that you wish you hadn't done, and whatever it is, whatever just is going on in your head, you put it on the balloon. And what I do is usually, I usually write this guy's name, Walter, on the balloon. Right, darling, he understands. Walter was, and you're probably going to think I'm a nutcase here but the Walter goes back to when I was 13 years old. And it was the first time that my mother ever let me go to the beach with the girls. She wasn't coming with me, or sitting up watching, She let me go, and there was about 10 of us, girls, so we all had our little bikinis on, and we put our blankets down, and we were looking nobody was going in the water, but we all put our blankets down, and we were all looking good, and we had our long hair. We all looked like Cher, and so we sat down, and as soon as we sat down, the boys came. It was like, bam, it was great. It was wonderful. It worked like a charm. And they just swarmed in, and I remember sitting right in the kind of, in the middle, and the boys were like around, and this was in the chat, that stuff. And I turned my head, and there was Walter, cutest boy, on the blanket next to me, and he says, "Hey, you got a hairy chest." Yeah, now it's another thing you laugh now. I walked home. I walked 5 miles home that day. I was heartbroken. I didn't know what to do. I just didn't know what to do. I was devastated. Yeah. And then when I got home, I realized that, hey, I'm Italian. We got hairy chests, Everybody I know has a hairy chest. But it didn't. I really couldn't let it go for a really, really, really long time. It really bothered me. It was very difficult for me to even see myself as a pretty young thing as I did before Walter sat down on that blanket with me. So it's that type of things that we really need to let go. And we all have them. So I have balloons. You're welcome to take a balloon. They're out by the table, by my book table. I just want to tell you that they are latex, just in case anybody has an allergy to latex. Okay. All right, so now we got the second diamond. Now let's go to the third diamond. Right on the heels of letting go of the past, Lucille's is, what was the first one? Does anybody know what the first one was?
Change your perspective.
Great, second one?
Let go of the past.
Excellent. And now we're going to do the third one, which is to take control of the future. So you let this go, and now you're moving this way. Oh, I'm sorry. Charles reminded me of something. Yeah, after. I'm sorry. After you do that, here's to Walter. Okay, here we go. You have to pop it. And the reason we pop it is because then it becomes trash, valueless, nothing to do. Okay, so now we're going to take control of the future. Now, and to take control of the future, we're talking about setting goals. That's basically what it is, setting goals. How many people here write goals? Excellent, excellent. Now, how many people here, well, I would imagine if you're all working, you probably write goals for work. You do your performance evals and all, that's all goals, that's what that is. But the question is how many do it for your personal life? Excellent. Wonderful. And that is really the most valuable thing that you can do, is to write personal goals. And it's also something that we need to teach our children and hand that down. That's the gift of teaching children how to write goals, how to see the path to where they want to be. And that's what Lucille is telling you. You have to write a goal. You've got to see, part of the reason why a lot of us baby boomers may be in financial straits when it comes to into our retirement is because we haven't set the goal early enough. We didn't learn, and we didn't understand it, we didn't get the concept. When I started working in the probation department, the head HR lady said to me, she said, okay, well, let's talk about your retirement plan. I'm saying, I'm 21 years old, I just got here, and every day I wish I had listened to that woman, Now that I'm in my 60s, I wish I understood the concept. I didn't get it. I just didn't get it, So this is what we're talking about, is setting the goals. And these goals could be short-term, mid-term, or long-term goals, or life goals even. But it really is, seeing yourself where you want to be. I would really encourage you when you go home to sit in quiet, if anybody gets quiet, and to really visualize, where do you want to be in 5 years or 3 years? Where do you see yourself? Are you still living in the same house? Are you still hanging with the same people? Are you still wearing the same clothes? What is it? Kind of see yourself walking into a room and being able to visualize what that's all about. I had a colleague who said, when I talked to her about this exercise years ago, is that when she closed her eyes, she saw herself living in Florida, owning a couple of properties in Florida. That was about 4 years ago. And now she's in Florida, and she owns 2 properties there, and she's well on her way. But it was that because she could see it. I got to get out of this cold. I can't be in this cold. I see myself in warmer weather. And so she visualized it, and she put herself there, and she worked toward that. But that's what taking control of the future is. Where does she want to be? Where do we want to be? Which takes us to our 4th diamond. And that is to have a gratitude attitude. This is probably, somebody once said to me that this should be the first diamond, have a gratitude attitude. And it could be, but it didn't flow that way in the book, so that's the fiction part. It gets to be the 4th diamond. But really what it is that it's really vital to understand all the goodness that comes into our lives. Because in essence, there's lots of stuff that happens to us. Lots of stuff that happens to us. But to really celebrate each day. And this was something that Lucille had down to a science. This was her engine. Every day at 12 o'clock, she would stop for lunch. Hence, lunch with Lucille. Okay? And people would gravitate to her at lunchtime. I would have lunch with my mother every day that I possibly could. She worked about 5 blocks away from where I worked, and Charles was working with me, and every day Charles would say to me, can we have lunch? And I'd say no. And he kept it up, and he kept it up, and then one day I said, look, man, I go to lunch with my mother every day. If you would like to join me, you're welcome to join me. So now he's like, oh, okay, well, now I have to go, So he went to lunch with us, and after lunch, I'm walking back to the office, he said, now I understand why you go to lunch with your mother every day. It's an occasion, it's a feast. And what she would do is not that, there was anything extravagant going on, but she would stop. How many of you here eat in your car? Yeah? Don't eat at all? Eat in your cubby? Wait till later because I'm not really hungry anyway. But she's saying no, whether you're hungry or not, you stop. You gotta stop. And you gotta celebrate the day. You let go what happened in the morning. If it's weighing you down, if it's glorious, you share it at lunchtime. and you celebrate the day. She would carpe diem, celebrate every single moment. We hear that term a lot. Celebrate every moment. So at 12 o'clock, when you sat down to lunch with her, she would raise a glass. Hers was Jack Daniels on the rocks. But I'm telling you, it can be anything. It can be Diet Coke. It can be a juice pack. It can be water. It can be anything you want it to be. But you raise the glass. And as you raise that glass, you will smile. Go ahead, smile. It's great, yeah? And as soon as you raise that glass and as soon as you smile, those endorphins kick in and those muscles relax and life is good. If not for the rest of the day, at least for that moment. And you smile. And what she would do is she would then raise the glass and then clink, everybody's glass. And she would then say, Cintani. Any Italians in the room? Yeah? Great. What does Cintani mean? 100 years. Very good. Cintani, she'd say 100 years. She would wish 100 years to you, and you, and you, and you, and you. That's what I wish for you, that you should live to 100 years. Now, like I said, she made it to 92. And she did it. She did this every single day of her life. And what else happened is it made other people want to be around her, because we know that as we age, we need that social circle even more than in our youth. And so she had that social circle. There was people always wanting to have lunch with her. Just to sit around and clink your glass and cheer the day on and talk about nothing. Nothing of real relevance or importance, But just something that would make you feel uplifted. So that was the fourth thing that she did, to really have that glorious attitude when it came to the day. She would start her day, and she encourages us all to start our day with a song. To go to bed at night, to list all those things in our lives, for that day anyway, that we are thankful for. Some people can come up with 2 or 3 or 4. I've been doing it for so long that it could take me an hour to list them all, because I list every single one of them. All the glorious people that I met today, people who are helping me get dressed, people who help me set up, these people that are just people who are loving each other. I remember that. I fall asleep to that each night. And sleep is important, we know that. So I make myself fall asleep on that calm note. That there are people around me who love me. There are people around who are kind to me. And it puts me to sleep. And when I wake up in the morning, Lucille recommends that you find yourself a tune in your head. And that tune will set the tone for your day. We got into that song, Happy Because I'm Happy. I have no idea what the rest of the words are. That's all the words. I'm not so good with words. And it started just playing in the house over and over and over again. And it really is a very uplifting tune. And so there are lots of different tunes. And Lucille would come up with them. She would say, spread the wealth. She'd go from Frank Sinatra to Tony Bennett to whoever. But she would always come up with a tune. She was always singing. So it was very glorious and very uplifting for her anyway. That's how she did it. Now, give me the first one. First diamond. Excellent. Second. Perfect. Third. Fourth. Excellent. Now, here's the thing. If you look there, you see it, and if you look here, each of the diamonds are connected, right? We know that none of these diamonds, these are really best practices, if you want to call them, by a trainer's term. None of them are standalones. They are connected, and they are connected with a chain. And we call it the chain of persistence. Because we know that every day is hard. Every day we get thrown something. Something else is coming, bam, bam, bam. you've got to be able to fend it off. But she's saying that if you continue to practice these things, continue to change your perspective, continue to let the crap go, plan on what's next, celebrate, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. It gets easier first, and it also then becomes your way of life. How long does it take to make or break a habit? 21 days, excellent. So she's talking about that. Try it for 21 days. It will work. Now she did it for 52 years, and I saw it. It worked. It really, really works. Because when we talk about persistence, that 10,000 hours, I think Malcolm Gladwell talks about, doing something to be an expert, you do it for 10,000 hours. That's really what the persistence is all about. And Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson, he says that which we persist in doing becomes easier. Not that the nature of the task has changed, but our ability to do it. But our ability to do it has increased. That's really what he's talking about. Our ability. Situations don't stay the same. Situations don't change. We change. That's what Emerson's talking about. This is a little footnote the other day, and I was speaking to a group of 20-somethings. When I mentioned Ralph Waldo Emerson, they said, is he? He said, yeah. So I said, well, let's see. If he were alive today, I think we would call him a blogger. And everybody goes, oh, yeah, I know Emerson. Okay. So you have to make it relatable, I guess. An essayist, right, would be a blogger? So anyway, okay, so that's the thing about persistence. That's how the chain goes. So those are the four diamonds, and now you know about the chain of persistence. Now, I want to thank you all for coming.